Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Executive Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. A friendly reminder, this is a video conference meeting and per Bagley-Keene requirements, all cameras must be kept on for the duration of the meeting. If you are unable to have your camera on, you must indicate a reason for your non-appearance during the meeting. Please be aware of the surroundings behind you. All committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar's website. Zoom captioning is available. To enable, select live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then select enable transcript. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Crystal, can we do roll call?
Sure. Connolly?
Present.
Elsteroff?
Present.
Escobedo? Milrod?
Present.
Blakemore?
Present.
Falcon?
Present.
And Judge Rosie?
Sure.
All right, noting our, oh, I see Efrain has joined us.
Yeah,
all right, thank you. And then our liaisons, Selena. And then I don't see Melanie. Is Melanie in the attendance pool by chance? Okay, I don't believe so. And then I'll just make a note of State Bar staff. We have all members present and we have quorum.
Great. Thank you all. Let's go turn to whether there's any public comment. Kim, is there anyone in the waiting room?
No, excuse me, no one has their hand raised.
Okay, great. Well, let's get into the meat of things. So quickly, I'll do the chair's report. I just had a quick update, which was that Dwan and I made a presentation last week to the Judicial Council, which was really great. We were able to tell them about the various grants that we administer, the impact that has on the actual community, and also share with them the ways in which we've grown over the last few years. And so that was a great opportunity. And Melanie at the Judicial Council was very helpful in helping us prepare for that. And Crystal and Dwan did an amazing job on our PowerPoint and getting all the information ready. So many thanks to them. And I have to say, we saw Jason, your name came up in a different presentation. I guess you're on like a technology committee or something. And I was like, I know Jason, like a celebrity.
I was like very concerned, like, what did I do?
You were part of some technology. They were doing some like jurors technology something. Anyway, but you were on the committee, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Okay, so that's my oral report. I'll turn it over to Dwan to give hers.
Yeah, I have a quick update too, but the Judicial Council presentation again. I want to just thank you, Melanie and Don, who's not here. It was very like I've been in that room many times, but it was I got butterflies when all the judges and all the members and Chief Justice was like there. It was a very official presentation. It was a good experience though. So thank you, Melanie, for facilitating that on behalf of the commission.
And thank you both. I just want to tell everybody what a fantastic job Erica and Dwan did. It just made the program shine, and the committee, they were just all ears. They were like this, and they were really focused, and no one in the room was talking, and no one was looking around, and so it just showed how much you captured their attention and how much I hope they really learned about our program. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Melanie. And I just have a really quick legislative update. So Selena, Lack, and us, we advanced a request to the legislature, and I'll share. You've heard this before. I'll share again the kind of the broad contours. It would be for an increase for $40 million to the Equal Access Fund base. That's about $32 million now. That would go out to pretty much the impetus of that would be to help kind of with the shortfall in federal funding loss. And then there would another part, it's three parts. The second part is $5 million for disaster relief. And the third piece is for $10 million for postgraduate fellowship. It's a little bit kind of touch and go now. We are kind of waiting to hear back. I don't know if we have a lot of hope. It really kind of just depends on like the budget cycle. And so we're kind of in a waiting game to see how the budget plays out in California and whether, we see federal disaster relief money. There's a lot of play, right? State income tax revenue, if there are other cuts to funding loss and entitlement programs. So there's kind of a lot of factors that are going into play, but we may not know whether this is going to happen. Until like the summertime or late summertime. We're just gonna keep at it, I think is the update. And Selena, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to share as part of that.
I mean, everything you said is right. And we at LAC are talking a lot about how we mitigate losses by looking at other funding sources. And so even though we don't know for sure what federal funding is going to be cut, not just to legal aid, but as Juan said, to all the other federal funding in the California budget that impacts our ask, we're doing a ton of support for the community around local funding requests. Because a lot of your grantees get funding from cities or counties. I see this as very, very related as how we talk about the value of legal aid as the return on investment. So we're creating a toolkit, we're doing panel presentations, we're having advocates who have been successful in advocating like LA County or even Alameda County. So we're doing a lot of I would say like training technical support on shoring up your local resources when there may be federal threats or even loss of state funding. So for those of you who are kind of been thinking about what your grantees are doing, we're on it.
Melanie?
Melanie, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know if anybody's heard the news, but I just wanted to let you know that most of AmeriCorps funding was cut. The program terminated as of last Friday. So I just add more uncertainty into what's going to happen to the budget. But and very shocking to find out. And it was just so I just think we have to keep looking, like Selena said. We can't stop. We have to find other sources and other ways, and it's just the time to be so creative, so I just wanted to share that news.
Selena?
We've been talking a lot with Joyce in the State Bar around what the State Bar staff can do to provide additional information around, sorry, I'm gonna lower my hand, additional information around like mergers, what to expect. You've probably heard from some of your grantees, there's major restructuring happening now. There are layoffs, there are furloughs, there are salary reductions. It's not across the board. I know a lot of organizations that are hiring, but some of them are quite devastated. And so it's impacting, what I've heard from a lot of executive directors, impacting how some organizations think everything is fine and other organizations are in a true crisis moment. So it's this inconsistent, inconsistent vibe going on.
Mm-hmm.
But to the point that around being creative that Melanie mentioned, there are some organizations that may need to merge. And so it's not the first time that y'all have provided support. So anything that State Bar staff and the commission can say around being flexible to note that this is a time of crisis and transition. But talking with the LSC funded programs that had that forced merger, decades ago, they say that ultimately it was a positive experience. I don't know if Patience agrees, but we're trying to provide that framework that sometimes merging may be better for your staff and for your clients. And so how do you do that in a way that you maintain your grants? So these are a lot of percolating ideas that you'll probably hear from your grantees. And when you do the site visits, you'll hear them even more.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm related to that, like on the layoffs, we don't, at least at the State Bar, we don't have a good handle on like how often it's happening or the extent. I mean, it's just really anecdotal, but even from the organizations I've heard anecdotally, some of them are pretty surprising. It's not just kind of the smaller programs. At least one that I heard is a very strong organization, but I was pretty surprised by the severity of their cuts in their local grants that's causing kind of layoffs. So I mean, it's happening. It's unfortunate. We're doing what we can to kind of support grantees and really looking internally. Are there processes or things that the commission can either is it a communication thing, or are there things that we need to change in terms of our processes and our rules to be a little bit more flexible with all the uncertainty? So you hear more about that at the next commission meeting. There'll be a fuller kind of presentation. Erica, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you both for the updates, and I appreciate the LAC's efforts with, kind of local sources of funding. I know one of the recent convenings I attended, that was some of the feedback I got from some of the organizations, is they were trying to present to the new San Francisco mayor and definitely doing, figuring out what their talking points should be to explain why the investment from San Francisco is good. Okay, let's turn to our committee reports. And the first one will be the report from the Grant Eligibility and Support Committee, GES. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Erica. So pretty quick update for everyone. The next GES meeting that we have is actually next week, May 7th. So we've only had the ones we've met actually as a group since our last meeting, and meeting again today before our next meeting. So not much to catch up on. The committee will be reviewing requests from grantees to extend the deadline to submit their fiscal year 2024 audit. The audit submission deadline is May 1st, 2024. Staff can grant extensions up until the IOLTA EAF 2026 application due date of May 15th, 2025. If grantees request an extension beyond May 15th, 2025, that request has to go up to the GES committee. The committee is also reviewing late requests to approve budget modifications and carryover requests from grants that ended December 31st, 2024, that were received after the final deadline of November 27th, 2024. Finally, the GES committee will be discussing the 2026 IOLTA EAF eligibility applications and the GES committee's oversight of those applications. The applications are due on May 15th, 2025.
Any questions? Nope, doesn't look like it. Thank you, Jason, for the update, and look forward to hearing how things go. All right, let's turn now to Program Development and Impact Committee, PDI. So Judge Rosie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So the PDI committee is meeting next week on May 6th. We'll keep discussing how the State Bar and the Commission can strategically support grantees through emerging technologies as the federal and state policy landscapes stay in flux, as we've been talking about, and in preparing for and responding to natural disasters. We plan to hear from State Bar staff. Jennifer Zelnick is going to discuss the consultant Harbor's work on State Bar for the State Bar that they're doing on the use of emerging technology. That and other topics may result in one or more working groups to advise staff and the Commission with respect to the areas of priority that we have. Two of our members, Aaron and Ken, already on the Legal Aid Data Project Working Group. And so that working group will keep looking into how we collect and use data from the grantees. Before folks might remember, before we adopted the new charters, the PDI committee sought and subsequently received authority to approve the upcoming reallocation of the homelessness prevention forward grant funds. Staff is working on that now. We will take that up in our June meeting. In the future, though, we think that PDI is unlikely to handle these funding reallocations, but we will handle it and take it up in June, I think, because we have a meeting to do that already on our calendar. And then also, pursuant to the new committee charters, it will be the GES committee that oversees the next round of the Care Court Awards. That's now a recurring grant and so in consultation with me and other state agencies, staff recommended that we renew with only the necessary technical updates so that they comply with the new Budget Act. The request for proposals for that will release mid-May, and then GES is likely to meet in late June to finalize those awards by July 1st. in accordance with the draft budget. And I think that is it for us. I'm looking at my notes and I don't see anything else. But questions about that stuff? Oh, I see Catherine.
I just have a question, which I don't know that it's just popped into my mind while you were thinking of it, but given the reductions in other funding, have we heard anything about an interest in other programs applying for Care Court? There's been very few actual legal aid programs have applied, and the default then becomes that it goes to the public defender. So I just wondered if this was a moment at which that funding might be more of interest to programs.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Chris, do you have thoughts on that?
Heard yet of any new QLSPs being interested, but I think that actually hadn't occurred to me, Catherine, that maybe we should be a little more proactive about reaching out to some that like this would be a mission fit, and they kind of decided to pass on it the first 2 cycles, but like maybe they want to revisit that because it is quite a bit of funding that rolls over to the public defender. Like there's a significant funding that could go to QLSPs to do this work. Thank you for suggesting that.
I think it's a good suggestion. I wonder if we should reach out to do like provide the context in case and there's a QSP that might want the opportunity again.
I think one of the things is I appreciate the worry about, sort of conflict with the organizational value, but I actually think the work that's being done doesn't really end up in the place that people were most fearful of. And so I wonder if even the opportunity to hear from a couple of the current grantees about the work they're doing and their approach and all of that would be timely given kind of the changing landscape.
I think it's a really good idea.
And as you were saying that, Catherine, I guess I had one more thought, and I don't know if it's possible, but Chris, I wonder if there is a way for us to interface with DOF and the Judicial Council to see, it's probably unlikely, but if there's opportunity to be a little bit more flexible with this funding, given everything that's happening in California, it might be worthwhile. It's just an ask.
A good suggestion.
Thank
Selena?
you.
I agree. It's a great idea to explore Care Court funding for organizations that are seeing potential drops. One of my requests, based on what I've heard from other people, is that budgeting for that has been a bit challenging because organizations aren't sure how many referrals they're going to get. They don't know if they can budget FTEs. So Chris, to the extent that you've gathered information from grantees that are helpful for potential applicants, that's what I've mostly been hearing is like, how do we budget for this? How do we hire if we don't know how many referrals we'll get?
Great. That's a good point. Melanie?
I guess it would help if I unmuted as well, then lowered my hand. I was just thinking, we at the Judicial Council just attend a ton of meetings with Department of Mental Health and HCS and HMA, and so if any of that information or information about how it went in the court for cohort 1, cohort 2, anything like that, if that could be useful, please don't hesitate to tap, and I'll be happy to put that together and see if we can't get some more information out to your folks.
That's great. Great offer. Any other questions? Oh, Jason.
I just want to throw this out there that if the chair is so interested in speaking to someone with cohort 1 Care Court familiarity, that's me. So I'm happy to help, and given the GES association, it's fine. So yeah,
I think we
I think our
should
PD
invite
does
to the
both work here.
presentation so they can hear directly from you. Could be really terrific.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I'd want to attend just to learn a little bit more about how it's going in the counties.
I mean, I can tell you just the high level summary, and I'm sure Melanie will agree. I think a lot of folks have heard about this. I think the caseload that we are experiencing statewide is not what had been hoped for, given the amount of funding influx, which I think I think that validates Selena's concern on behalf of organizations, right? Like, how do we budget for this when it's kind of like, even to the degree it's variable in different jurisdictions, it's a lot lower than expected. And how much do we attribute that to, like, well, it's kind of still novel as a program, and could it explode later? And then how do we ramp up? Like, lots of open questions. And I think we're seeing a little bit more steadying of pace, and at least in Riverside County. But it's still a relatively low case volume. I know there's some jurisdictions, at least from what I hear from my colleagues in the Bay Area, that they're seeing a proportionally larger case volume, or disproportionately larger case volume, despite being smaller courts and counties, right? So smaller population, generally their caseload in similar case types is lower proportionate to our relative size, and yet their number of CARE Act filings are larger. So it's not necessarily tracking in a direct correlation to, say, other types of mental health related filings, or other types of criminal cases, or other, like, it doesn't seem to be tracking consistently. So it is a little bit of an oddball. That's partly to do with the fact that it's so new, and it's hard to understand, I think, some of that. I see Chris nodding, which makes me feel like I'm not entirely off base with what he's seen from his seat. So.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's across the state.
Right.
Well, that might just go to Selena's idea for a discussion about program flexibility and how the legal aid portion of the funds could be used as some ways other than the pretty narrowly prescribed ways. So is there an information or a training piece, or can you use it for a different kind of, I don't know. Anyway, it just seems like interesting.
Yeah. Great points, great discussion.
I'll just say those were all really good ideas, and I jotted them down to confer with our team and JC, who's also here. So
yeah.
We'll keep that conversation going.
And Jason has volunteered himself to be the, presenter on this. So we already have someone there. Thanks,
great.
Jason. Okay, why don't we turn now to the report from the Rules Committee, and Catherine, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, just briefly, we heard the group that met after the charters had been discussed, so we shared that with everyone. People thought the charter was appropriate and happy to have that. At the last meeting we had, we also reviewed guidelines around the current guidelines around the purchase of real property for grantees with state bar funds. It was a presentation by the General Counsel's office. They have been busy with other things, and so we're not going to take that up again until August, but we look forward to having it then. And then at our next meeting, which happens to be on Friday, we're going to look at a rule that staff has drafted. It wasn't done by a working group, about related to monitoring visits, as opposed to the previously approved rule for quality controls. And then we are also beginning to take up the support center topic. There's been a working group that has been working on that, and we're interested in getting some feedback from the larger rules committee before there's any drafting done. So that'll be kind of an opportunity to hear from other committee members, members of the public, etc. So that's what we're doing.
Great. I'm excited to attend that meeting on Friday. I think it'll be really interesting. Okay, let's now turn to our first voting item, which is agenda item 4, approval of the February 14th open session minutes. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or any discussion on the minutes? Okay, seeing nothing, is there someone willing to make the motion?
So move.
Patience moves. Second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Judge Rossi. Let's go ahead and take our vote.
Sure. Blakemore,
Yes.
Thank you. Galkin,
Yes.
Judge Rosie,
Yes.
Escobedo,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Alsaroff,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes,
All right, that's 7 yeses, 0 nos, motion passes.
great. Let's move into top our agenda item 5, our business for today. So we're going to start with Crystal, who's going to give us a presentation, and we're going to have a discussion about feedback from our planning meeting back in February. So Crystal, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, just confirming everyone can see my screen. I'll just wait for head nods. Okay, wonderful. Just a quick presentation on item 4.1. This is from the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meeting on February 28th, which was our planning meeting a few months ago. Quick overview about this survey. It was open for about a week. We reached out to the commission back in March, and pleased to report that we had a pretty good response rate. 15 out of the 20 who attended the meeting were able to submit their survey responses. It was a pretty quick survey with 5 questions. I'll be just going through the 5 questions just because it was so brief, and we can just see the sort of the trends and the graphics from that post-meeting survey. So the first question was, on a scale from 1 to 5, please indicate whether you think the trainings and presentations were in alignment with the Commission's mission and strategic goals. Just sort of graphically, as you can see, there was a lot of agrees and strongly agrees, a couple of neutral responses. We had asked this specifically for the various presentations during the meeting, so that implicit bias training from that external presenter, and then the remaining presentations here were from staff, so disaster legal services coordination, the changing policy landscape, the legal tech initiative, and then the presentation on the legal aid data project. So overall, pretty positive, and agreement that the presentations and materials seem to align with the mission and the goals of the commission. And then the second question is sort of looking forward, forward-looking, what interactive and content elements would you find helpful for next year's planning meeting? This was a select all that apply option. I'll just take a pause here so folks can sort of orient themselves to this graphic, highlighting the top 3 just from this. Commissioners expressed interest in getting hearing about strategic plan progress and those related updates, maybe a little bit more interactivity with smaller breakout groups of maybe 3 to 4 commissioners, and then team building activities was also sort of top rated in there. Just a note for the other response, if it's a planning meeting, sort of some type of the planning that staff needs or wants the commission to do, might be a helpful approach in terms of determining interactive and content elements. Okay, again, just forward-looking, what facilitation options would you find helpful for next year's planning meeting? Select all that apply. Very strong preference for a mixed facilitation of both internal and external elements and facilitators in that. I don't think that was surprising. I think that was our approach we had in February 28th. So sort of keeping that same mix seemed to be favored by the commission. Question 4 was about timing. What session timing would you find helpful for next year's planning meeting? Select all that apply. I think largely single full day session, which I think our meeting was back in February. A lot of interest in sort of keeping it in person as well too, based on other comments received, just finding that interaction person to person very helpful and also sort of rewarding and fulfilling as well. Okay, and these are just more sort of ad hoc responses of additional information or resources that would have been helpful before or during the planning. Not included here, but there's a lot of gratitude for staff and providing the materials and sort of the positive reactions and responses to the meeting as a whole, but just sort of tangible in terms of things for future meetings. Copies of the presentations further in advance, maybe having discussion questions on a focused set of questions, brief written reports or short slide decks in lieu of oral presentations, DEI implicit bias training every other year, maybe giving the commission prior notice about DEI focused presentations and again, opportunities for small group discussions, not surprising given the responses in the prior question. So this concludes all of the survey questions. Happy to leave the slide on, but wanted to also hear from this committee in particular, sort of feedback reflecting on the meeting a few months ago and sort of thoughts of the survey results.
Thanks, Crystal. Does anyone have any comments? Dawn, go ahead.
I can kick us off because, we talked pretty much at length internally about how to kind of improve our planning session. And if you recall, the year before, we actually had a professional consultant come out and help us do strategic planning. And she was actually really, really interactive. I don't know if we would necessarily support having to hire like a professional facilitator. I mean, that is something we can think about. It's also quite expensive to have a professional facilitator come. One thing that we didn't do a great job at this time that I'll acknowledge that I do think we should do more, and you saw that in the kind of the survey results, to be more interactive with one another. And there's like also that team building aspect of it so that the commissioners can kind of get to know one another and like also the staff. I think, in our office, we run 3 sub-entities. Josrashi was part of COAF, which the other 2 are a lot smaller in size, but what they have is a lot more connectivity with one another. So I think they're like this, I think the executive committee, I think one of our, like we could plan for that, I think a little bit more and integrate that in a more like conscious way. I think at that once a year, and I don't know whether it's like it probably is during the meeting itself, but there might be an opportunity that we want to provide either before the meeting or after the meeting to kind of get to know each other a little bit more. I feel like some of the other subcommittees at the state bar, and particularly the ones that we run in our office, they have that with one another and really does strengthen the work. So that's my like 2 cents.
Thanks, Dawn. I'll just add, I thought last year, and I'm very glad that we are, I hope, going to have this tradition of having this one, in-person kind of, yeah, I think all day work makes sense, but whether it's half day or all day, but like having everyone together in a room is a really great way to like get to know each other. I feel like, it makes you sometimes learn things about your colleagues that you don't get a chance to have those free flowing conversations, and they might be resources that you don't even realize. So I do really want to encourage that we continue doing this. And I support kind of doing more interactive, activities during there just to facilitate that a little bit more. I kind of like one of the things that Sandra did that I think we could probably replicate in some capacity is those small breakout groups where you are sort of tasked with, as a group, kind of coming up with solutions or addressing a particular issue. And, you sort of write out on the sheet of paper or something, and then you report out. And I've seen commission staff do that really well in convenings as well. So I think that's a really great way for people to have that time to kind of talk. But I also want to say, I thought that the information you guys presented to us was really excellent this year. I feel like I learned a lot about kind of the AI presentation, the different things that are coming up on the horizon. The DEI presentation I thought was really helpful. So I do want to say, thank you very much again to staff for putting on, I thought, a very good presentation or a good meeting in the first place. Okay, that's enough for me. Other comments or? All right, seeing none.
I'll jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Amin.
Sorry, Erica, I'll just jump in and second it. I know it's kind of tough, and I think we might have talked about this a little bit. We don't meet very often as a big group, and so I know we've got a lot of business to cover and a lot of things to do when we do get together. But I do think that level of connectivity is really important, and I'm wondering if maybe for next time, I don't know if we had talked about this, or if this was something that just kind of, maybe I had a conversation with somebody about it, about maybe thinking about doing, I know, state bar offices are great because they've got the technology and everything else, but I'm wondering if there's a way that we can maybe have some another venue outside, and I mean this because I'm thinking about it like outside of LA and San Francisco, so that seemed like everybody is traveling to get there, and maybe do something more in the Central Valley. Like, it might be harder to
That's a
get there,
great
but
point.
it might feel
Patience
like
is
we're
really in
more.
support. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, I think it, something to sort of get everybody out of there, like, like where they are, and sort of into a place together might be something that'll help that process. And there's a connection to the work that we're doing, right? Like, I think, we can keep those things connected. So I don't know, it's just a thought. I don't know if the resources or the logistics will support it, but it might be something to consider.
Yeah. Put everyone up at the same hotel. Catherine?
Yeah.
I like it. Well, I really appreciate the presentation, and I thought you did a good job of capturing comments. So I think it gives us a lot of food for thought. I will say, like, I have done meetings in the Fresno area, which is great, and it's a good idea. And in my experience, everyone says they're coming until 2 days before, and then suddenly you now have a meeting that you plan for 40 people and there's only 10 people there. So I don't really know how to fix that, except it feels like this reality, and maybe Patience has some strategy for enticing people in ways that I haven't thought of, but it's been a pretty consistent experience.
Thanks, Catherine. Patience? Oh, actually, I think Judge Rosie had her hand up first, and then I'll go around. Sorry. Judge Rosie?
Ephraim as well.
I think Ephraim might have beat me,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
now you
sorry.
jump on me, so I'm gonna go.
I'll go
Sorry,
after
Ephraim.
you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to, I mean, I'm happy to go wherever everyone decides to go. But one of the things that, because Dawn mentioned it, one of the things that COAF does, and of course there's less people, but we plan for the folks who are traveling and coming down, and even for the folks who are already in LA. One of the things that we do is either try to get together for dinner the night before, or we plan our flights around later in the evening so that we can do dinner after the meeting. And it's just, and we go to the, one of the places right by the State Bar's office, right? And there are several great places to go. But it really does allow us to get to know each other in a different way. Just because, when not everyone can go, right? People have stuff. But even if, a handful of people go, it's still a nice moment after the meeting to really talk about, stuff that's, each other, and get to know each other. So to the extent that, we could semi-facilitate that maybe before or after the meeting, I think that would help with the connection part.
A great suggestion. Ephraim?
Yeah, loving it, and I think there's some great ideas. So open always to other areas, and thinking about it. Inland California would be a good idea, since we're usually in LA or the Bay. So that's great. There's Inland Empire as well, and Sacramento too. That's not the Bay. So the thing I wanted to share too, as we do the feedback, and I know you kind of see it, but was there just sharing what I really appreciated, and what I always take a lot from is, I appreciate the last time when we had an opportunity to hear from community partners or hear from grantees. So, to the extent that there's some learning that comes directly from the grantees, the planning meeting seems like a perfect place, right? Because it's more about just conversation and learning. So just wanted to echo that. I really found that valuable the last time.
Great point. Patience?
So, thank you. I mean, for championing the possibility that people would come to the Central Valley, but Catherine's not wrong about how hard it is to get people here. So I think another alternative would be Sacramento, which Ephraim just mentioned. Relatively easy to get to for everybody, and it's much more difficult to, it's easier to get to, so people are less likely to bail at the last. So just, if we could do someplace besides LA, I almost don't care where. So just saying.
Great. I'm gonna say yay Sacramento because I live here, but I'm biased. But yes, I think Sacramento would be great too. And I know some great restaurants and there's some nice hotels. Anyway, Selena.
Just putting in a vote for Sacramento. I actually think Sacramento is great. My personal recommendation is not have too early of a meeting. When we've scheduled events for LAC in Sacramento, there are frequently flight delays from Burbank to Sacramento. And so we always have an LA group that comes in an hour late. So if you just plan to know that there will likely be Burbank to Sacramento delays, then it seems fine. I love meetings in Sacramento.
Well,
Awesome.
I was just going to speak to kind of logistics. You know, we do like we budget every year for the commission's meeting and the committee meetings, and I have to say this is one of our commissions that we never hit budget. We are so like the commissioners are so cost conscious. Some commissioners are like, I'm like, Kim, can you send them an expense report? And they don't even want to like claim that like we that's all to say if we wanted to, it is definitely possible. We're very leanly for our commission administration. So that is something doable. What I can do is Crystal and I can work up some scenarios and while we roll back to the XCOM, maybe not next meeting, but maybe the meeting after that before we start to plan for next year. Because this is the type of kind of feedback and part of the planning that would help the staff. Sometimes they're so in the weeds of like doing the memos and planning for the agenda items that it's hard for us to take a step back. But we'll roll back with you with some options and what's possible. And then we'll see kind of what venue there's are in Sacramento that's like at no cost. And then we'll give you all some options.
I just think we could have members of the legislature or their staff come talk to us and we
Oh,
could
that would be amazing.
influence them as a group. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a similar thought. Members of the legislature, there might even be, and I apologize, there's like a lunch group behind me, so I apologize if there's background noise. They're very rowdy right now. And I can also look around at the DOJ because I know we do, grant stuff and have like had attendance at the interagency convening. So there's other possibilities as well. And so it might be fun to kind of get some of our interagency groups to come in and talk as well. And if you're in Sacramento, sometimes it's a little easier to have some more state workers that might be around and might be able to speak. Well, this is great. Thank you, Crystal, for the presentation. And thank you to the XCOM for, I think, some just like really good feedback and ideas. And I'm excited to do this again next year. All right, so the next issue on the agenda is 5.2, and it's a discussion regarding the Executive Committee Advisory Panel, which is an idea, and I'm the one who's taking the lead on talking about this. I don't know that I'm going to need that much time, but I just wanted to sort of throw out this idea that we had when we were doing the restructuring was to try to have, alumni from the commission that we think are, kind of a valuable resource and not to necessarily let them go, to actually ask if they'd be willing to be kind of on an advisory panel and in an emeritus status so that we can use their institutional knowledge, maybe get some advice. They may be willing, if they're available to come back and help with presenting or something like that. The folks I'm thinking of are, either individuals who might have expertise with banking, for example. I know like Jeff Ball turned off and he has a lot of banking expertise and might be a good person that we could include on that kind of a panel where we wouldn't necessarily need them to like formally meet all the time, but just people who we feel like we could reliably call, who know that that's, that's what they're signing up for, is to kind of have these check-ins. And given that we now have for a lot of the positions a term limit, people will need to like term off, which I think is great. We need like new blood and new people on the commission, but there's a lot of institutional knowledge that can go when someone leaves. And so one option is we could ask everybody who terms off if they want to be part of the advisory panel for the first like year or two, and then how we use them, we can then kind of delineate whether we want to ask them to continue, whether it really is just a new alumnus is part of the panel for the first year or two, given their knowledge. But it's an idea I've had. I don't want to lose like expertise, connections, right? People that we think can be helpful to us in our broader mission. because they've termed off, or for other reasons have decided maybe this isn't, you know, they don't have the time or whatever to commit to doing full on show up, be part of quorum, all that kind of stuff. So I throw that out there to just see what the rest of the XCOM members think about that kind of plan and what you would recommend or what suggestions you have as far as how we would structure it. I don't have a formal proposal at this point. It's really just an idea I've been having for a while, and I wanted to get some feedback. And then depending on the feedback, I'll work with staff and we can work together to put something more formal together. Anyway, all Patience, you have your hand up, so go ahead.
So I love the idea of being having access to the wisdom and institutional memory of our alums. Speaking as somebody who will be an alum some century, I would, before I would be interested in being an advisory committee member, I would want to know why. What is going, how can I be useful? What information, what is it that the advisory committee is going to do? So that feels to me like the first most important question, because otherwise what you'll get is you'll get some folks saying, sure, of course, I love y'all, and I'll miss you when I leave. And so, yeah, of course, I'm happy to be an advisor, but then like after meeting 2, they disappear because it's updates or something. Like I am never going to attend a meeting that's just like, hey, this is what we're doing. That's, you know, when I'm done, I'm done. If I can't have a vote, like, why do I come here about it? So but that's only me. So, but that would be important. Those would be important questions to be able to answer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I sort of envision less of a meeting with updates and more like a meeting with questions. So it would be more like, I sort of envision maybe you have them meet twice a year. Maybe you invite them to come to our in-person meeting. Maybe you have, you know, 1 or 2 other meetings where you basically can go to them and say, you know, we're working on the, as we're going to talk about later today, the IOLTA distribution, you know, like banking folks, what's your take on the forecasts that they've done? So we could narrow it to like a certain set of type of questions that we can ask. But yeah, that's a great point. I don't want it to be just like, hey, here's what we're doing. You know, do you want to hear how awesome we still are and you're not part of it? Like, I agree. But I do want, you know, some questions. Catherine.
I mean, I think there's like a variety of ways people can be helpful, and it might not always be about coming to a full commission meeting. So it might be, you know, if we're doing an IOLTA distribution, like staff knows they're a resource, or the executive committee, if we had questions and wanted to invite them to do a presentation here about future forecasting to the extent that's even possible at the moment, given the many moving pieces of the economy. But I just think, I agree with Patience and sort of being clear about what the ask is in something that people can look at before they agree makes sense. I just think it might not it might be things that could be more helpful because it could happen on the natural or on a shorter timeline about specific advice to specific committees or something like that. So
That's a great point. I mean,
Sorry. You know, I've been giving some thought to this, and I think I agree. Being specific, I think Erica, to your point, about, you know, maybe making this request of everyone who terms out to sort of gauge the willingness to be a part of something that might come up in the future. Might be a good way to do it, and then maybe just having like internally a roster of folks who are former commissioners who have, you know, maybe certain expertise or were involved in certain projects or in certain committees where they were instrumental. And then I thought maybe there's also a way for them to be a part of it. This might be helpful because commissioners we've got a lot going on. We're serving on committees and being, a part of, that it's hard to do this with existing commissioners. Maybe former commissioners can be like informal mentors for new commissioners who may have questions about process, may have questions about how things work. And it's hard to navigate that, on your own, and also with other folks who are in the midst of it. I don't know, that might be a way for them to contribute as well. Or maybe a way for us to gain a benefit from them, from a contribution from them.
Great ideas. Efrain?
Yeah, thanks for kind of bringing forth the idea you've been thinking about. I wonder, I have more of an initial question as to like trying to discern what we're trying to build, right? So currently, is there like an exit process? Is there like an opportunity where, let's say, with the XCOM, the rolling off members could have one session and then it's kind of like an exit interview or exit conversation? I'm wondering if we do that already, because that might be, as you're thinking about how to evolve it, it might start with something as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't. And that's, I think, one of the things, that's where I'm like, this has been very helpful. I'm not sure that we need like, I initially had thought of it as like a committee, but I'm not sure that's actually what we need. I think what we need is like I think an exit interview is a really good idea and one that we haven't done, and I think we should do. We tend to just, as people are rolling off, we have a meeting, we say, thank you very much. We hope you'll stay in touch, and it's all very public. But I think maybe what we need is, like, as Amin was saying, just a roster, right? Here is name, areas that you worked on, committees you were on, and contact information going forward. And this could be part of the exit interview. Are you willing to be a contact if we have questions on, issues? And then it can just be more natural, right? So that if you're the chair of PDI, right, the new chair, and you want to, find out what Judge Rossi was doing when she passed this thing a couple of years ago or supervised it, you can call up Judge Rossi, right? Or when I'm finally done, if someone's like, why did you do this strategic plan this way? Someone can call me up and be like, why did you do that? And I can be like, well, I have some really great ideas. So it may be like much more lower commitment than I think sort of a panel would suggest. It's just, I don't want to let our alumni go, right? Our alumni can also be supportive. If we're doing legislative proposals, maybe they're at institutions that might support or might be willing to write letters, or they may have connections as we're navigating through different things. So this is all very helpful. And I think the exit interview idea is really good. And I think maybe just building out, at least initially, kind of an internal roster would be a really great start to it. And then talking to people about what we want to do. And yeah, I don't know, Dwan, you may tell me like you already have this and I'm just not aware of it, but I just wanted to.
No, I was going to say the roster idea is really good. Some of the information we have at our fingertips, but we take a stab at, we have an internal document that takes a stab at like filling in like expertise from commissioners. But obviously when commissioners come on, you learn so much that they might have an expertise that is not obvious from their resume. I mean, that's the type of thing that I think it would be great to learn in the exit interview, and then how they could be a resource for the commission, like beyond their time at the commission. So I really do love that idea. And that is something like, again, Crystal and I can work with you, Erica, on something to then bring back to the executive committee to see if it's, if we're missing anything. And luckily, we don't have a lot of commissioners terming off this year. The state bar doesn't have any appointments for commissioners in the trust fund commission. I can't recall off the top of my head if judicial council has any open spots, but it's going to be a very slim year, if anything, for turnover. But doesn't mean we can't start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great to at least get sort of an internal process in place. Yeah, I like this idea. And I like the idea of mentors, right? As part of that exit interview, we can say, like, are you willing to be a mentor to a new commissioner? If they have questions, they can go to you. Because you're right, when you're already in the midst of it and you're doing a lot of the work, it can be hard to be like, yeah, I can spend like an hour kind of telling you how IOLTA allocation works. You know what I mean? Like that's difficult at times. So these are all really great ideas. I think what I'll do is I'll go back with and talk with Dwan and staff and try to come up with like a more concrete proposal. And then I will like let you guys know kind of what it is. But I appreciate the feedback on this. And obviously if other feedback comes up, please, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. The other thing I was thinking is if we do, our in-person and we have a dinner, it'd be great to like invite any alumni to that dinner, right? That's an easy kind of social way, right? If someone's nearby and they're like, if the meeting ends up being here in Sacramento, like I would totally crash whatever dinner, people are at to be like, hi. So I would like to just have a little bit of take a cue maybe from the law schools, right? And have a little bit of an alumni connection because I think that could be very beneficial to us. Okay, thank you all. Any other comments on that before we move on? No? Okay, well, thank you all for the feedback. This was very, very helpful for me on doing some ideas. Okay, now let's move to 5.3, which is the approval of the 2026 IOLTA distribution and the recommendation on the distribution. So that one's going to be Dwan, Michael, and Heidi.
Yes. So let me give a little bit of context, and then we do have a short PowerPoint that we'll share with you. And you have, as part of your meeting packet, a pretty extensive memo that talks about kind of all the background and, a lot more about the IOLTA statute and the Leadership Bank program and kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But just for context, usually every year, that summer meeting used to be the June commission meeting. Now it's been moved to the May commission meeting. The commission, one of its like core functions is to determine the distribution for IOLTA, or interest on lawyer trust account grants, for the following year. And the reason why this decision is so crucial is, as you all know, our funding is very foundational funding in California. We support over 100 programs. The vast majority of those programs have been our grantees for this since the inception of the program. So they've been part of our program for 40 years. So they really do rely on IOLTA funding to kind of keep their organizations alive and to keep their funding. And unfortunately, though, IOLTA funding is very volatile, as you know, from your work on the commission, and as we've tried to lay out in the memo, it tracks interest rates, right? So when interest rates are good, our revenues is stronger. When it's not, then it's lower. And it's very hard to predict. It's historically always been hard to predict, but I would say since COVID, it's been very, very hard to predict. And now that are in an environment where the market is in flux, where the federal administration, there are a lot of policy changes. It's very hard. So I say that to give you context, because we give you revenue projections. That's always kind of tenuous anyways. But this year we say this every year, but this year we had a very difficult time doing revenue projections. So we say that because it's not an exact, it's a projection, right? We actually work with like a national consultant to figure out like where interest rates we think it's going to land. We have bankers on our commission that we consult with. They're not always in agreement with one another. So it is really like the best guess that we can do. The other thing that I'll say that I think for the commissioners that have been on this commission for a while, and Selena knows this, we do tend to be, I would say, a little bit conservative. And I'll give you the context for that is, I think the staff does not want to be in a position to have to claw back money from grantees midstream, because it's just very disruptive. When COVID happened and interest rates kind of dropped overnight, we didn't know how that was going to play out. And that was really the first time that I had been, since I've been here for 10 years. And when I looked back at information like that, there was a moment in time where it was potentially and it was just so disruptive for programs were calling daily. They didn't know what was going to happen. It's disruptive we had to meet that year, like 3 different additional times. So we don't want to be in that position. So that's why we trend. But obviously we need to balance the fact that, especially now, programs really need funding, right? They need it because there's so much budget shortfall. So how do we get to a number that we want to be able to distribute as much money as we can while being kind of responsible with the funding and not being in a position where we have to call back money. So I give that as context. The other thing to remind you all is for the first time, based on the commission's like new structure and the charters, the recommendation for our IOLTA distribution is going through the executive committee. It used to be a staff recommendation that would go to the full commission at that June meeting. That's now May. There was a suggestion, and we are very appreciative of it, that it needed a little bit more vetting because it was such a large decision that it probably should go through committee, and then the committee, it made sense that it would go through executive committee, because in past years when it's been a little bit kind of, I would say, like a lot of discussion at the commission level, the commission has felt like they needed to make a decision then so that we could be on time in terms of distribution. There wasn't a lot of breathing room in order to come back. So I actually think this is a really great change, because we'll make the presentation, but if you're like unsure about it, there's a little bit of time between now and the commission meeting to either send us back to do a little bit more homework or think about it, and then we can come back as a commission to kind of decide. So it won't feel, the sense of urgency won't feel as, it'll give us some breathing time. So that's the background. And then Heidi and Michael and I are gonna, again, everything is in your meeting materials, but we're gonna high level overview of kind of the numbers. Michael, Heidi, would you mind sharing the PowerPoint? And please do interrupt us at any point if you have questions or comments. Okay.
Let me know if you can't see it.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you, Heidi. Next slide. Okay. This is kind of the outline of what we're going to go through, but why don't we advance? Okay. Okay, it's just a little bit of context. So last year, and we knew this was coming, interest rates were about 5.5%, and there had been several years where the Federal Reserve was like, we're going to drop interest rates, maybe we're going to drop it, maybe we're not, and it didn't happen. Last year, there was the first year we thought that this is really, it's going to happen, and it did. So there was a start of a rate drop last year. We're at 4.5%, so we were at 5.5% last year. The Federal Reserve started dropping interest rates, so we're at 4.5% now. Then there's the last box there, you'll see there's this is our projection, right? There we give you kind of a couple different models in the memo, but where we think we're going to end this year, and we've heard different things. This is why it's been so difficult. At the beginning of the year, there were from the Federal Reserve themselves, they said we're going to probably do three rate drops this year, and then now they have come back and they have said 2 rate drops. And there are lots of kind of economists and lots of other banks that have said now they think it's 2. So our projection is really that in that kind of middle scenario, 2 rate drops. And you'll see there's a number of Federal Reserve meetings that there's an opportunity for that to happen. Okay, next slide. Okay, just a reminder for everybody, we call it IOLTA grants, but really there's a couple different revenue streams that go into it, making it IOLTA grants. The biggest one is obviously our IOLTA interest revenue. So what our banks are holding in the IOLTA accounts, that interest. But there are a couple other things. Our Justice Gap donations, our licensing fee, our investment income, when money rolls back from unspent IOLTA grants, that all goes towards comprising our IOLTA grants. Next slide, please. This is our investment activity, which has been really robust. Because our revenue has been so strong. And we put them in, as you will see, a lot of treasury bills and very, very safe investment. And there is a codification topic right now to kind of codify the practice that we've been doing. So you'll hear more about it at the commission level. You'll see it's close to 10 million there. And then just a little bit about the IOLTA statute. So it was started in the early 80s. That's what started this program. And there's really only been one instance where there's been changes to at least the IOLTA revenue portion of the statute. There's been other kind of substantive changes to kind of how we administer grants and what's eligible, but in relation to kind of our IOLTA revenue. And that happened in 2008, where we call it the comparability rule, where banks are required now to offer kind of comparable products for us. to other kind of similarly situated accounts. And that didn't happen before, but that change in 2008 really was a boon for us in the last few years, when revenue has been pretty high in our accounts. And then the other thing to note is that in 2019, we started a leadership bank program where programs can elect voluntarily to pay a little bit of a higher interest rate for us, and then to waive any fees and charges on the accounts. So this has been just a really great program. It helped us kind of buffer during the pandemic when interest rates were really low. We still had a number of banks that kept at that leadership bank kind of level. Next slide. Oh, and just another note, our reserve policy. So you all know that our reserve policy changed a couple years ago. It actually gives a lot more discretion to the commission, both discretion and guidance on what to do with our distribution and what the commission could do with the reserve. So previously it was like a 4-step formula. When interest rates were rising, the commission was beholden to using this formula, and when interest rates were lower, then it gave the commission a little bit more discretion. In the new reserve policy, actually the commission has a lot more discretion. It gives factors to kind of consider in terms of making a distribution, but it provides you with some when revenue is really high, then you can fully fund the reserve at the $25 million level, which you all have been doing for the a couple years, which the staff also recommends now, that since revenue is still strong on IOLTA, to keep it at that 25 million. But that is a point of discussion of whether you want to, given everything, all the uncertainty, if there is a desire to kind of shrink that reserve and distribute more. Our thought is no, because it's still a fairly strong distribution, but that is at your discretion if you want to go in that direction. Okay, next slide. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Heidi.
Great, thank you so much, Dawn. So this slide just is a brief recap of the State Bar's total grant distribution historically. So from 2015 up through the end of 2025, you see the large red line is that total amount that we've sent out. The takeaway from this slide is really the upswing from the total distributions is really a result of the IOLTA distributions, which for 2025 is over $250 million. If you were to take a look at the other lines, they either trend downwards. So for instance, all of our discretionary grants for the most part ended in 2025, so that actually trends down, or they remain flat. EAF, formula and partnerships have for the most part been fairly stable and flat. Next slide, please. This next slide gives a little bit more detail as to just the IOLTA portion of the distribution. We've trended fairly upwards since 2021. The change in the interest environment, we went from practically 0% to a marked increase year over year up through most of 2024. Like Dwan had mentioned, it's gone up as high as 5.5% for the Fed funds rate, which is the basis for our earnings for IOLTA amounts on deposit. And because of that, that's really driven the amount of interest earned for the purpose for distribution. So again, for 2025, we're close to $252 million. Next slide, please. This is a brief recap of the Fed funds rate at the end of the year and how IOLTA revenue changes in distribution amounts have sort of charted. So, looking at 2024, we ended the year in 2024, the Fed funds rates being at 4.5%. The IOLTA revenue, including all the donations and all the other revenue streams that Dwan mentioned in the few slides prior, was almost at $232 million. looking at the total change, that's almost 22% just on the revenue basis standpoint. The grant distribution for 24 was at $95 million, which was also, an increase from the prior year at 87, almost 88%. For 2025, we're projecting the Fed funds rate again to be at about 4% at the end of the year. We'll go into a little more detail in a few slides following, but you'll see that for total revenue, we're projecting $182 million, which is a decrease from the prior year of 21.5%. But I think looking at the distribution for 2025, this was what we went through this process last year to determine, and the distribution for 25 IOLTA is close to $252 million. So almost 165% change compared to the prior year. Next slide, please. Typically in the review process, we provide a comparison of what the commission and the board ultimately approved in the projection details and how we would end up in 2024. So on the very left side of the column, you have a heading with board approved. Those are our amounts from the last cycle when we went through this, and comparing it to the actual amounts realized in 24. Summarizing these things, what I wanted to focus attention on is, essentially at the end of the year, when you capture revenue less the expenses, incorporating or beginning fund net balance and getting to an ending total, what we projected was approved was $252 million for the purpose of distributing. So looking at that board approved number and contrasting it to how we actually ended the year, we ended the year with $295,790,000 in ending assets that would have been used for distribution. So the differential of almost $44 million, or a little bit over 17%, the driver of that is essentially the increased revenue that we collected as a result of very steady bank balances and the interest rates not really moving throughout much of 2024. For the most part, through 9 months of 24, the Fed funds rates did not change. It was at 5.5%. They took that one. They took 1% off towards the end of the year. So for the most part, we realized a lot of interest income from deposits in 24.
Michael, can you stay on the slide a little bit? And I should have
Sure.
said this when we were on the reserve policy, especially for our new commissioners. Before we changed the reserve policy, we actually had to project out 2 years worth, and it was very difficult. So one of the changes on the reserve policy is we are projecting less. So if you can think of it as for our 2026 distribution, it's really based on the amount of money that we bring in 2025. So and you'll see in the next slide that we base it on like revenue that's collected so far this year, and then we have to project out a few quarters. But we used to before had to project out like 7 quarters, so it made it really difficult. So this has helped a little bit. So the reason we show this slide is, as Michael said on the left-hand column, these are kind of the projections that the commission sent up to the Board of Trustees to get it approved. So we thought we were gonna, those are the numbers that we thought. And then we actually ended the year with a lot more money. And so that's the number that Michael's circling. So that number gets pulled into like, to add, if you can think of it, adding to the pot for this year's distribution. So we get this question a lot when people are reading the memo. How come you're saying that you're getting, you think you're going to get 180 something million dollars this year, but you're you're recommending to distribute over 200 million. The reason why is because you can think of it as like a surplus. And last year we underprojected a little bit. And so and it's not really the reserve. Our reserves are marked differently, but we have this surplus sitting in another account. That's not our reserve technically, even though some people would think of it as but it's a surplus that then will get added to the revenue this year. And that's why our distribution is still fairly strong for 2026. But let me stay on this for, just if you have any questions. Usually this is the slide that takes a little bit of getting used to kind of understand. And if there are no questions, then we'll move on. But this is usually where we get a lot of questions about. Okay, I think then maybe people are good then, Michael.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. So going into the current market projections, wanted to pass that off to Heidi. She'll walk everyone through some of the base assumptions for our projections used this year and those details.
All right, thanks, Michael. All right, so kind of consolidating all of the history and background we've heard thus far sort of is what drives how we approach the projections for the IOLTA income revenue. So right now, these are the sort of the basis of what we're assuming for the current year, the 2025 year. And so we do believe that IOLTA revenue will decline or may decline from 2024 based on sort of market and sort of the conversations happening around interest rates. At the time we made those projections, we assumed that interest rates would stay steady until the last quarter, and then there may be 1 or 2 drops in that last quarter. Things change every day though, so these are just our best guess. The investment income may be anywhere from $6.5 million to 10.3, and that in large part is driven by how much money we have to invest and the impact of interest rates on those investments. We are anticipating a slight increase in voluntary donations, which come in as part of the the fee bill or the annual fees, as well as individual donations and Cypre awards, which have been generous lately, but there's no predicting what you're going to get in Cypre. And then also one of the driving factors is how much money is being held across all IOLTA accounts in the state, and that number has been quite robust lately. But it's a key factor in the calculation, and so we always factor in if those may decrease. So there's a couple different scenarios, and also we just assumed we would maintain that $25 million in reserve, and there's no need to sort of touch that.
And just on that, sorry, Heidi, stay on that slide. The voluntary donation, usually it's about 6 to 8 million, but like Heidi said, we got one Cypre check recently that's 3.5 million. That's the main driver for that voluntary donation money being now a 9.5 million. So hopefully, and we don't actually when we do these budget projections, we don't put a number for Cypre just because it's been so kind of all over the place. But I would say last year and this year have been very good for us on the Cypre fund.
Yes, we've had a very good first 4 months of 2025 as it relates to Cypre donations. So that is taking us up a notch. Yeah, Selena.
I was looking at the chart. I will reserve all my other comments. But is there somewhere in here where you say, because Heidi, you just reference it, what we do know about January to March, since we're still in April?
Yeah, that we do factor that into the formula or the projections that we'll get to next year or next time or next slide. Excuse me. The coming slides. Yeah. Okay. So moving forward, so we always approach the projection in sort of as sort of 3 different options, and then for consideration, and then the staff makes a recommendation as to which option we would choose. So here are the various scenarios that factor into the options. So the first calculation is how much revenue are we going to receive? And so in IOLTA, so we do a calculation based on certain assumptions. So in involved in that calculation is sort of the total bank balances for the year, the assumptions around those, determining a weighted average for the interest rates based on the changes that may or may not happen throughout the year. And then also sort of what our net assets are going to be at the end of the year that would be available for distribution. So in each of these, there's slightly different things. So in scenario A, we sort of assume status quo. The federal fund rate doesn't change throughout the year. There's no change in the bank balances. And so that gets us a certain projection that leads to the $237 million in the net assets at the end of the year. Whereas option 2, we did factor in 2 decreases to the federal fund rates in September and December, and then calculated that based on bank balances being reduced by 5%. And so we did a weighted average and did those calculations throughout the year, and that resulted in a net balance at the end of the year of $217 million. And then in option C, we took it a little further, and again, we assumed that there would only be 2 interest rates and they both would happen in that last quarter. But we decreased the bank balances by 10%, and that's sort of, the kind of one of the the factors that we sort of use to be able to sort of make adjustments. Yes, Catherine. Oh, you're muted.
I know, and other things were happening on my screen, but so I saw in the materials sort of this different projection for reduction in bank balances. And so just by way of comparison, like in the last 2 years, what has been the percentage drop or change? I can just say change because it could have gone up in bank balances.
So there has been a steady increase in bank balances over the last few years. So we have not seen a decrease in the bank balance. So the reason we've chosen this path is it adds a variable that we can sort of control, and that accounts for whether we lose a leadership bank, whether there's more drops in the federal funds rate and things like that. So using the decrease as a multiplier is kind of our parachute, if you will, to sort of reflect any unknown changes that may come into the equation. So that's sort of we probably don't strongly anticipate that, but it's used for as a way to sort of gauge for other sort of the unknown sort of world we're sitting in.
It has been a change. I know shortly, or maybe in COVID, there was this worry about leadership banks. Has anything changed with leadership banks in the last couple of years?
There have been, 1 or 2 leadership banks that have dropped out. They haven't been our significant leadership banks. So we do hope, that they maintain. But if one of them, the top, go out, it radically changes our projections. And so we do want to have a little room for that possibility. We're not predicting that possibility, but playing with the account balances in the multiplier is how we address that as a possibility, I think, in terms of how we approach the projections, if that makes sense.
I mean, that's the piece that worries us a little bit. I don't know if you all will recall, I think it was either last year or the year before. Recently, there was a leadership bank that called us and said that they were going to drop. And then we brought it to the commission, and magically that didn't happen. So, I mean, we do have a theory that probably someone made a phone call and undid that for us. But that always makes us kind of a little bit nervous that a leadership bank is gonna drop. And so, as Heidi said, we kind of built that into the scenario B. But this is where I think it's at the commission's discretion. If you all think that we're leaning too conservatively, you have at your fingertips. And it's really not just these 3 options. This is a starting point. You all can decide a number that's outside of this or in between. This is really just so we can start you can wrap your heads around kind of the number. But this is where we kind of love your feedback.
Right, and that's what option A sort of represents. There's no change in the interest rates, or there's no drop in account balances. It's sort of, we just stay status quo for the year. And so that's sort of like, if nothing changed, that's kind of the expectation is in option A. Yeah, Erica.
So, and this is, I think, probably related to what you were just talking about, but like, how confident are we on the federal rates not dropping more than like 2 times? The only reason I say that is, the current administration head does not like interest rates being high and has um, threatened to fire the Federal Reserve Chairman, although he backed off of that when the markets went nuts. So there may be a check there, but I'm just, I know I know you guys are looking into a crystal ball, but I'm just curious where your, not confidence, but where your view is that it's not going to go down more than 2 steps by the end of the year, or half a
Yeah,
percentage.
I would not say I have confidence in predicting interest rates at all, especially in this environment. And with tariffs on the table, the GDP numbers that came out recently, the number of meetings there are still available in 2025. So I think we went with 2 because at the time we built this, that was what sort of the community, or sort of like the experts were sort of predicting, and sort of there's different sources we turn to sort of say, okay, what what is the likelihood? And so that's part of why the staff is more inclined to be more cautious in terms of these things. And we didn't go back and refigure this because a lot of the changes have been sort of, or there's more, there's just a lot of discussion out in the world, and you just never know how it's going to slice, especially right now. It's really unpredictable. And so that's where the bank balance sort of, lowering the bank balance is also, is kind of where you get some insurance in that, in your multiplier, right? So yeah, I think it's very hard to adequately predict what, especially in this environment. I think this is probably one of the harder environments to anticipate.
But one thing that we could do, and Efrain, I'm just responding, and then we'll go to your comment or question, is if you wanted us to kind of have another scenario where we like, say, drop interest rates, but don't drop our net IOLTA, then we could do that before the next meeting and then send it out to you all. It's just
I mean, in some ways, like, I don't mean to say that these aren't conservative enough, but given the unpredictability, I do kind of wonder, like, what if the rates bottom out? I mean, they could bottom out before the end. Like, what if he fires Powell, puts in someone that he believes, like, that he likes, and then the rates go down to 0? Like, what happens?
It's a very unpredictable situation. I think it's changed every couple of weeks. It feels like, right?
Yeah.
The tariff situation, I think, puts the Fed in a really, really tough spot because I think in the last interview, the chairman talked about,
prices go up, employment goes
pricing
down.
go up
How do you
and-
do which one, right? Prices go up, you keep the rates up. Employment goes up, you drop the rates down.
So
It's very unpredictable.
There's very little choices from monetary policy for the Fed when it comes to that, where you've got sort of artificially increased pricing because of the tariffs, and then you've got slow growth or a contraction in the economy, and unemployment. So there's only so much they can do. I think ultimately, with the number of Fed meetings still left on the table for the rest of the year, it really may depend on some of the economic data that's going to come out within maybe the next month or two on consumer confidence, on employment, on the pricing indexes, and so forth. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure. Politically, he probably doesn't care too much about it, but politically, it probably would not make sense for him to increase rates, especially if they're already at 4.5%. And if he were to decrease rates, I'm not sure that would effectuate the economic situation too much. He may still sort of choose to stay put overall. And I think for our purpose, that factors more into, I think, the options that we're displaying. Very little effective change on the rate. And that might still be an outcome. We have a meeting scheduled, I think, on the 7th, so about a week's time. Depending on what is said and how that's reported, it might give the market and everybody else who tracks at a better sense of what the strategy might be going forward for the remaining part of the year.
Efrain, I know you had your hand up, so we don't want to.
Yeah, I did, and I mean, these are always the fascinating discussions about what's going to happen. I think, you know, will the market the biggest check, kind of their decisions and ability to pivot and willingness to pivot, of course, correct. But kind of just wanted to chime in and say, I think you have to have some type of contingency and use some variables. I was just wanted to chime in and say, I think B is the most reasonable, even though reason and ration is not the flavor of the current moment. But and here's why. I just wanted to share this with my colleagues. I think it's because you want to have these, you got to set at something and anchor something. The proxy of the 5% for back balances as a kind of proxy to balance things out is smart. And for me, it's because you want to be at a point where then, you know, rather than try to predict, get right and write it out well and protect these assets, the other side of it is the impacts we're trying to mitigate on the field. And sort of it's a similar quandary for philanthropy, right? How much do you really protect your perpetuity purpose, right? And kind of keep your corpuses at a level. And then how much do you need to release and absorb so that you can maintain the field? And so I think it's a similar thing. So I just wanted to say, we do want to have a measure. I think B seems more measured, not going overly conservative to try and write something out, and at least be able to know that we're thinking about the consequences on the other side, right? Which is the reductions in funding that we already know the field is actually facing right now, not just from governments though, but from actual funders that are pulling back and slowing down. So that's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Catherine.
So thank you, Efrain. I was gonna sort of raise that other consideration that while this is sort of about how much money to distribute, what we think will happen is that there's gonna be programs who have already lost significant revenue. And at least from what I'm hearing is, you know, in some of these, who knows if they're accurate, but documents that show a whole range of different federal funding sources being zeroed out. And while I like Selena's optimism about getting money locally, like LA County just asked for a bailout of $1 billion from the state, which isn't probably going to happen because the state doesn't have that money. So anyway, Sacramento City is cutting in the budget. So I just think it's a hard time for programs, which is the point that Efrain made. And I appreciate the 5% reduction as a proxy for really other contingencies, and maybe we should just call it that and give an example of what those are, because it's anyway. But so the question I had though was, when you say the rate drops by 1/4%, what amount is that in terms of dollars that are lost, and what is the amount of dollars that is a 5%? That contingency number, right? So like, it's great to have the percentages, but it's hard to wrap your head around what that is without knowing. So do we know what the dollars are? Or
I can go to the next slide, which has all the dollar calculations. So maybe that's sort of for the visual of
maybe just if you could just answer those two, because it's a little overwhelming. Your charts are lovely and I'm sure they're very accurate, but I always have a hard time finding the two numbers that I want.
Right. So if the variable between the interest rates and the bank balance dropping is measured in this line, IOLTA revenue. So it's this top line here where you know,
Yeah, but it doesn't break it out with the two of them, so I'm actually interested in what 5% equals and what 1/4% in the interest rate drop equals.
I think if you can give
So
us a minute, Michael
I
may
don't-
need, Michael might need to refer to that spreadsheet that he does. Can you give us a few minutes? Maybe we go to Erica and Jason while.
Sure, yeah.
Well,
Heidi
and
Michael.
I also say we do a weighted average, so it's not, so it impacts the weighted average that we use at the end of the day as the multiplier. And so Michael can calculate sort of what the difference is on a month by month basis and kind of give you that information. But we take it into consideration with the other you know, it's weighted for the full year, right? So we're using
That's
so
okay,
it
but
gets
5% represents a number somehow.
Mhm.
So when you calculated this, 5% equals a number,
Right.
and 1/4% drop equals a number. And I'm just curious what those numbers actually are.
So I think if I distill it, scenario and B and C, they both share the same assumptions in terms of the interest rates drops.
They do.
They do. They both
They do.
assume.
Yeah, I agree with you. They do.
And so the only differential between scenario B and C is just that 5% differential between the principal reduction. So to answer your question, strictly speaking for IOLTA revenue between B and C for the 5%, it's just
9
the
million.
difference. It's about $9 million.
Yeah.
And then I think to talk about what the rate differentials would factor out to be, I would have to look a little bit into the details of how we did the calculation. But I wanted to just mention and address that part of the question first.
So why don't we give you a minute, Michael, to find the other, do the calculation for Catherine, and maybe we go to Erica and Jason and then
Okay.
while you find that for us. Erica?
Yeah, so I am pro getting money out the door. That is all makes sense to me. The thing I will just say, and maybe this is not the right forum, and this may not be the right presentation, but like I have serious concerns that none of these projections are going to come true, that in fact you could end up with like a 0 or 1% federal rate, right? And I just think it would be useful for us to have like an actual emergency plan. Like what happens if that happens and the IOLTA revenue is not even 153 million, it's back to 20 million, it's back to 15 million. And that may not be likely, but I think it is, given the unpredictability of the current administration and the unpredictability of the economy, I just think even if we approve, and I think it's fine to approve anyone, you know, I think B makes a lot of sense, but to approve that, but I think we should be prepared for things to go real bottoms up and have a plan in place. But what are we gonna do?
Can I offer a little sort of, so we did look at that, and so if you look at sort of the I think is it the 21 year or the 2020, no, I think it's the 2020 year, that was sort of like rates were on the way up, right? And so we were starting to get more, and then they zeroed out, and so that 2020 represents a year where we had rate growth and then zero for a lot of the much of the time. And so so that brought in $55 million. And so that to me is the comparable, if something does actually, the bottom does drop out, because we have revenue already that we have accrued for, through today. And we know where interest rates are today. So there's only, so many months that it could zero out. And so I think the 2020 year is a very, is a year that we could look at in terms of from a historical similarity. I will say that the account balances are higher now than they were in 2020. But so I think to me, that's sort of, to me, that's worst case scenario this year. I hope we're not in it, but sort of that we did look at it from that perspective. And so this 2020 year is what I would point you to, if that's helpful.
I mean, I think the other thing I would add too is You know, we're at the end of April. So from an actual remittance standpoint, we've got actual remittances from January through the end of March. How we ended up March was actually still fairly robust. The bank balances still fairly good, over 7 billion, close to 7.9 billion in terms of total amounts on deposit. And then from a revenue standpoint, it was over $16 million for that month alone. It's a little bit of an anomaly because usually quarterly months, we've got banks who pay on quarterly basis. But you know, I think it would worry me more if all of a sudden the bank balances went the other way. It sort of ratcheted down unexpectedly and went below the averages that we've seen, or to the amount of the remittance in terms of interest all of a sudden went down to like $14 million on a quarterly month. You know, with that being said, you still have a good and robust amount of income that's been realized within this first year. You know, as we move into maybe the second quarter, rates haven't changed so far. They may not change within the next couple more months. So, you know, surely, slowly and surely, within a few more cycles, you'll probably have 2 quarters of actual remittance information. And I think from that standpoint, if all sort of holds true, it sort of closely reflects to what we're being optimistic on, which is that interest amounts and remittances for IOLTA still remain fairly robust, at least through, you know, 6 months of the year. You know, we'll have to sort of see what happens the last part of the year, but that's the volatility that's in the marketplace right now. But I wanted to just maybe mention that to give folks a little more insight into what's actually been taking place, if that might help.
Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
So I really appreciate what Michael just kind of laid out, and as much as I tend to agree with concern, Erica, with what you've been saying, and I'm pretty concerned about those same things. I think there's a reality that if we react to the degree of volatility overzealously and start tilting at the same windmills that are being tilted at federally, we'll be chasing endlessly what is illusory, right? And I think what I liked about your last comment and kind of the, we'll call it emergency contingency planning, and like, what is our framework for what we're going to do? I think what we can do is set up a framework, be transparent. I mean, this meeting is public, but I think we can be pretty transparent and communicative about these are the assumptions we're making in funding these things. And we have, like, given the known market volatility, and the recipients of these grants are not unaware of the market volatility, we can say, like, we have these milestones we're looking to, and depending on the current status of, you know, market volatility, the funds rate, et cetera, we may have need to make emergency adjustments mid-year, right? We're not planning on that necessarily, but we're putting you on notice that is a possibility, because these things have pretty significant impacts. I mean, on what our revenue is given the funds rate, right? And we can be transparent about that. I think it is on us to do that relative to grant recipients, to speak truth to the reality that they are reasonably concerned about as they look at market volatility. I mean, in my own shop, in my own world, I've got tons of employees who look at market volatility and are worried about budget cuts to the branch, and what does that mean for, like, everyone's worried about it, and reasonably so. And I think speaking to that point and saying, we're planning on this. There's nothing that, like, this is all valid as of today. This is all, you know, if this continues, we're on track. However, we know that things are very volatile right now, and this could change at a drop of the hat. And we have plans for those things too. Here's what those things look like, right? Whether it's milestones, whether, you know, it might be reductions, whatever. And that way there's at least some security in folks knowing what to expect if there is a big change, right? Okay, there's a big change. It's not going to mean my funding just vaporizes out of nowhere. It's going to mean, like, here's the protocol. These are the steps. There's going to be an emergency meeting. You know, there may be a proportionate reduction, whatever, right? At least there's some expectation setting, and then people can plan based on expectation contingency, but they can't plan on complete unknown. And I think we can do the same thing. We can say, these are some contingencies. We kind of have some rough order of magnitude guidelines, and we tell folks that that's the framework we're operating under. I think that is about the best we can do. And I think, you know, Heidi made the comment, and I think this is true, given the volatility. I mean, we are feeling around for light switches in the dark. And I think that's likely true with a lot of folks in the federal government at this point too. And the Federal Reserve, like, who knows how this is going to play out? There's a lot of unknowns economically, and I think it's unreasonable to expect anyone in our executive committee or state bar staff or at the state to be able to read those tea leaves, because not feasible. So I think we just work with the best we can do, which is setting up a framework and setting expectations and acknowledging a reality of volatility that we know to exist.
Patience, you want to go next?
So I think that Erica's comments and Jason's can be read together in a way. It makes sense that we have contingency plans for when things are going to be different from how we expect them to be, because for sure they're going to be different in one way or another. Hopefully we will bet on the conservative side, and things will be more cheerful than any rational person anticipates right this minute. But I'm wondering whether we should do that contingency planning right now. We responded very agilely and quickly at the end of last year to anticipated disaster on the federal side. And I wonder if there's a way to build a reevaluation, reexamination in somewhere mid-year, and make the grants more conservative with a commitment to re-examining the situation in December or November, whatever. I don't know. I guess the rate cuts will happen in December. But at some point, and be able to say to grantees, we're hoping for this. This is what we know for sure we can give you, and we're going to be re-examining later in the year to see which direction things have gone in, and this may be it, or maybe we can augment, which is a horrible situation to be in if you're ED, because how do you hire people and not be certain of your resources? And on the other hand, as an ED, I would rather know. I would rather have the smaller amount face the prospect potentially of some kind of clawback. That would be disaster. So
Yeah, I hear you, Patience. And so I think the two things that sort of are at our fingertips to consider are, one, we've maintained the reserve of $25 million, right? So there's $25 million we can, we have at our fingertips at any point. We could just decide to increase the reserve and hold back more in that dedicated plot. We have not done that historically because of concerns, about how that gets seen across the state. The other thing we could do potentially is, like you said, be really conservative, say, here's your base grant, and then sort of each quarter, whatever, as income, if it increases, we could do, I mean, I don't know if we could do, additional distributions. I mean, it becomes incredibly hard and labor intensive from an administrative side. But I mean, I think that this is one of those things that we have to choose which risk we're willing to we can tolerate. So Selena?
I think I'm hearing the same information from everyone, and I'm interpreting it slightly differently based on all the conversations that this commission has had on the exact issue over the last 15 years. I do think something that would be helpful, because we're going to have this exact same conversation with the full commission. I don't think we can avoid everybody airing their anxiety and concerns about everything going on with the federal budget. I think it might be helpful if Heidi and Michael prepared, like, what does worst case scenario look like? But then, to me, even option A is kind of like level, like nothing changes. It's not even best case scenario. Like there could be a best case scenario where there are no drops. And so I think it would help to see the range. And then I would caution against the recommendation that Patience has laid out of distributing a smaller amount and then coming back with more. I think the timing with the Board of Trustees decision means it would almost be impossible to get those funds out to programs in a way they could use it. Or maybe Dwan says it could happen.
It can't happen. I'll respond to that after, but it's not even a possibility, Patience, but I can go into more detail after.
Yeah, and my only other thought about that is that we have been in this situation before, and the commission has been, different philosophies each time. And I think every time there's always a safety valve, an escape valve, where you tell programs we are doing the best we can. I believe the state bar is conservative. I believe that Heidi in particular is very cautious. And I'm usually arguing that she's too cautious. But if there is a terrible situation where it starts to look like 2020 again, we can tell programs and say, your Q3 distribution will be reduced by X dollars because we are implementing the safety valve. So Q1 and Q2 will be safe. Q3 could be impacted, but Q4 is really where you're going to see where the risk could be held. And who knows what we're going to look like in Q4 of 2026. And I also agree with Catherine's statement earlier that so many organizations are facing cuts now that distributing a little bit more based, again, on Heidi's cautious numbers, I think will save jobs and provide really core services to clients. So, I mean, y'all know where my optimism lies. I also feel a lot of anxiety, but in this part, I trust State Bar's math on this.
One thing I'll say, this is not Heidi's numbers. They are a group number. I am not the only one who is making the decision. I might be more conservative than what these numbers represent. So I have optimism in these numbers. But the other thing I would say, I want to be clear, we're only predicting through Q4 of 2025. We're not predicting through 2026. So it's really just like 3 more quarters that we're sort of predicting. So, and that's part of the change, why we wanted to change the way we make the distribution decisions. So we're, our window of prediction is much smaller than it has been historically. Jason?
Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily disagree with the idea of having us run a worst case scenario or a significantly worst case scenario as suggested, though I think if we're going to do that, I think we still have to be a little bit tea leaf reading on like what is a worst case scenario, because I mean I did some international economics when I was in undergrad, and so I've seen what happens when things go really haywire and the federal funds rate equivalent goes negative, and like how much are we willing to predict that kind of stuff, like, because it gets really wild with the numbers at that point. And I think depending on how broad a brush we paint on the extremes, like it ceases to carry meaning. And that like, well, it's a full spectrum, like all the way to -4%. And it's like, well, that's not really that helpful. So as long as we're measured about, here's what our prediction is, kind of like keeping on a consistent trend with what's been telegraphed from the Federal Reserve and otherwise, and here's kind of like an alternative scenario where things are a bit more extreme, and we're going to use the COVID years as our landmark for an example for that, acknowledging that may be more or less of a response than what we would get in some other extreme outcome. I mean, there's a lot that can happen between now and end of 2025. And also the alternative is possibly true where, there's a lot of dust up, but not a whole lot that happens relative to these figures. And that's also possible.
Yeah. I want to let Efrain and Duan make their statements, but I do want to give a time check. We have about 5 minutes left in this meeting. So why don't we let the two of them make their comments and then let's move on to approve or whatever we're going to do. Efrain?
Yeah, and I'll be very quick. Thanks for that, Erica. Just to kind of chime in and say, on the worst case piece, I think it'd be useful for me to think more about, hey, let's just have a plan on what do we do versus trying to see more numbers that just project and get into all these other scenarios, but more of here's what we'll do, how we communicate or caveat anything with grantees. But moving on one other thing. So that's it.
Duan?
I was just going to respond to patients in that, we have a very tight timeline to get these done because the Board of Trustees has to approve it. And then we have to send out allocations, and then programs have to do budgeting for it. So there actually is no breathing room in terms of like deciding a number now and then revising that number later this year. I mean, we might need to do that if interest rates drop, but not in terms of like as a strategy, I guess. There's always like COVID was unpredictable, right? And so the commission had to meet several additional times to see whether we had to cut rates. So if that happened, then we would have to take those kind of scenarios. And what we can do is we can build in extra meetings. We can also, as Jason suggested, which we do, message to programs what it is. What I want to caution though is also like messaging and being realistic with also like tempering like anxiety and adding to that so that executive directors can't even plan. And then you have executive directors are already like fairly conservative and they take our messaging and then that causes like layoffs that maybe didn't need. So it needs to be it's a little bit of a delicate in terms of like, yes, obviously programs need to know that this is volatile, but like if we go to such an extreme, they might think this is gonna actually happen. So it's a balancing act in terms of the messaging piece.
I
and
wish
then
you
Michael,
so much luck in appeasing or easing anxiety of
well,
anyone who could be a recipient here.
I'll say this, programs are comforted that the commission has never had to cut grants. I mean, that is one thing that when you all go to do your distribution, they have a lot of faith that number is going to stick. Obviously, things happen, right? And they know like COVID was unpredictable. We had to figure it out, but they are and that comfort is, it's nice when people are planning. So we have to kind of just temper that. And then Michael, do you have the numbers for Catherine? Okay, great.
Yeah, so wanted to give a quick response back to Catherine's question on the impact of sort of the anticipated rate cut. So looking at our projections and some of the details to that, a 25 basis point rate cut from the Federal Reserve has an effect of essentially decreasing our calculated revenue by about $2.5 million, if that makes sense. So looking at scenario B and C, scenario B has a larger overall deposit balance. The rate cut differential from that rate movement is like 2.6 million. On scenario C, which had a smaller depository balance, is like 2.4. So we can just settle in the middle. It's about $2.5 million. On average, a 25 basis point rate cut would have on our current projection model.
Thank you.
So hopefully that gives you a little bit more solace in what maybe the rate cuts might do. And then separately, I just took a quick look at a projection forum tool that I use to sort of keep track of variability and probabilities of what Fed meetings mapped out for the rest of the year and what the marketplace thinks might happen. Worst case scenario, I think that's out there is you've got some probabilities that speak to a 1 percentage point rate cut towards the end of the year. So I think some of the thoughts of, potentially all of a sudden it go from 4.5% where we're at today. I think we're projecting it to go from 4.5 to maybe 4%. I don't see probability wise from a marketplace, everybody who's looking at it, there's no insight into things going that far south, at least. So hopefully that gives folks a little bit more optimism in what might be happening with the interest rate environment today. There potentially could be changes, but not that quickly, where like the bottom completely just drops in the next 6 months.
And we're at 2. I'll say one last thing. What we can do is we can actually do one, like 1 or 2 more projections in terms of it, like bottom it going down to like near 0, and also with an additional rate cut, so that you all can see before the next commission meeting. We'll include that for the commission as well.
Yes, but it's not, and I guess yes to doing another projection, but I don't know the advantage of showing it goes down to 0
Right.
based on what Michael just said.
Yeah.
That feels like in the anxiety because people rely on this. Why would we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that? I mean,
Okay,
I
we'll do the
actually
1%.
think the staff recommendation as it is solid at B. So like, are we supposed to approve something today? I'm being kicked out of my room, so.
Oh, sorry. We're
Right.
supposed to approve a recommendation. Again, we're going to still
Yeah,
have
so I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll take vote tally. Is that okay?
Yes, sorry.
okay.
I didn't realize you needed direction from me. Yes,
No
please
problem.
take the vote tally.
Sure. Blakemore,
Yes.
Falcon,
Yes.
Pedrosi,
Yes.
Escobedo,
Yes.
Milrod,
Yes.
Alstroff,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
All right, 7
Let
yeses,
me-
0 motion passes.
Let me be clear. I don't think that we should be putting numbers on the 0% federal interest rate, but I do think that we should have some thought in place about what happens if something very unpredictable happens. We don't need to put numbers up, but we do need to have a plan in place. And that's really all I was advocating for. I agree, we do not need to scare everybody, but I would like us to be prepared and not have an emergency situation. So
And it
I just
seems
want
like
to
that's what the
clarify my
executive
statement.
committee could do, right? Is gather information of what might that look like, right? And how might we respond, right? That seems like a perfect.
Absolutely.
I just gotta say, executive directors are used to anxiety. So I would way rather see the train coming in my direction and know there might be a siding that will turn off, but I also am gonna possibly have to get out of the way. I'd rather know that way ahead of time. So
Okay.
we'll
I think
improve it.
there's some confidence that we can give to the community in saying that we're prepared, even without necessarily having scary numbers. I agree with that. We're just predicting out a couple more quarters.
So
All
I
right.
am turning off my camera so I can walk if we're continuing.
Okay.
Might be able to,
So
like,
let me just recap so we know what we're doing. You all want us one more projection at 1%, but not near 0. And then in terms of a scenario planning, Erica, I'm not sure exactly what you have in mind, but if you have thoughts, can you work with staff to kind of integrate
Yes.
that into the presentation?
I'm
and then
I'm not even sure we need to do a 1%. I think
Yeah.
these numbers
Okay,
are
so
fine.
don't do it.
I just want
Okay.
us to have some in place that if things go haywire, we have a plan. Whether that plan can be purely procedural. The XCOM committee will do this because I think the rest of the commission will have similar questions, which is what if things go really haywire? What are you going to do? And I think it's worth, and Dawn, you and I can talk with staff about it. Just having an idea in place of like what committee is getting convened? How are we going to delegate authority?
So maybe that's what it is.
In place.
So why don't we work together, and then we can come up, even though you all didn't vote, we can come up with a kind of a slate of proposal for the commission, and maybe it's perhaps to be nimble. It goes back to XCOM to do their
exactly
flexible, so forth. Sorry, Selena, I cut you.
No, it's fine. My only clarification was around like wanting to know what worst case scenario is, because that's the trigger. Knowing like if X happens, then you'll do the procedural stuff that you're considering now. But understanding what X looks like, I think will help the other commissioners at the future full trust fund commission understand and be able to delegate authority. Like if it drops below 4% before X day, here's what it would look like.
Yeah, we
Sure.
can work
Yeah.
on that too. I agree. I don't want to put those numbers up. I agree with all the points about it being scary, but I do want to have some thought in advance in case something happens, because it has been very unpredictable in the last few years and or in the last few months. And one thing I will just say, in my workplace, we had thought a lot in advance
Mhm.
and had plans in place so that we were very nimble when things went awry. So
No. Okay,
that's
so
all
we
I'm
will work
asking.
with, we'll work with you, Erica. We're not going to do actual
Perfect.
projections, but if there are any
No.
commissioners that want to go over more numbers or scenarios, you can just ping us and then we can just have a meeting with you and show you those. And then Erica, I can actually skip that last agenda item, which is just previewing the next commission meeting, because it's really about the two big items is IOLTA distribution, and then we're going to have another facilitated discussion how we can support grantees. So you'll hear that, and those are the two big kind of topics for the next commission meeting.
All right. Thank you all for a very robust discussion and for tolerating my extra anxiety, which is probably not warranted, but is nevertheless, I unfortunately have a skewed perspective given the work I do every day. So thank you for tolerating and being patient with me. And with that, I think our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for the extra time today too, and we'll see you all soon.